Hello everyone, we will be looking at the midpoint formula today. The midpoint formula, of course, is used to find the point in the middle. So I've drawn a line here, so you can kind of see a little bit better. So I'm going to have two endpoints. And of course, midpoint, point in the middle, that's going to be somewhere right here. So that's here, that's our midpoint. And of course, it's used to find the midpoint between 2 points, as you see up here, of x1, y1, and x2, y2. That doesn't change from the distance formula. So the first step that we're going to do is label x1, y1, x2, y2, just how we did in our distance formula. But let's look at that first. It's a very easy formula. I say MP for midpoint. And that equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Very easy formula. All this formula is saying is I take my x's, add them up, divide it by 2. I take my y's, add them up, and then divide by 2. So for example, if we look at number 1, it says find the midpoint of line GH. So these two, these are going to be my endpoints. So I'm going to say G right here, H right there. And I want to find, oops, what was that? I want to find the point in the middle. So again, like I said, we're going to start off by labeling x1, y1 and x2, y2. That doesn't change. And then I'm going to follow my formula. So I'm going to say MP is equal to a giant parentheses. I have my x1, which was 7, plus my x2, which is 9. Then I'm going to divide that by 2. Comma, then I'm going to work with my y's, so that is a y1, which is -5, plus y2, which is -1. Then I'm going to divide that by 2. So my next line, I'm going to add, so 7 plus 9, that's going to be 16, divided by 2, comma, -5 plus a -1, that is the same thing as saying -5 minus 1, so that is going to be -6. Divide that by 2. And then my very last step, 16 divided by 2, that's going to be 8. And -6 divided by 2, that's going to be 3. Sorry that came out so squiggly, but in the end, that is going to be our answer. 8. Oh, that's a negative, isn't it? Yep. -6 divided by 2, that's a -3. So that is going to be our answer, and that is all you do. So let's take a look at how we can use the midpoint formula in other ways. Oops. And so you can also use the midpoint formula in order to find a missing endpoint. So what you guys tend to do here is that you see midpoint, you see two coordinate pairs, and you guys start doing the midpoint formula. That's not what we're doing here. If we read closely, we'll see that that is something totally different. So for example, in number 1, it says find the coordinates of A if M is the midpoint of line AB. So what this looks like, and I do want you guys to draw this out every time you do one of these, because it's going to help, I promise. So do a line with 2 endpoints and 1 midpoint. That's our midpoint. It says M is the midpoint, and it also tells me that is at -1, 2. And then I know my endpoints here are A and B. So A here, B right there. Then it says B has coordinates of 3, -5. So we'll do that here. And then we are trying to find the coordinates of A. Anytime you're trying to find one of these coordinates, I want you guys to label those x1, y1, because we don't know them. Then these can be x2, y2. And our midpoint, that is the x and the y coordinate. So if we look at our equation, we find the midpoint, which is our x and y, right? Or MP. Then we say x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then y1 plus y2 divide that by 2. That's what our formula looks like. So it's broken up. Whenever we input our coordinates here, we get an x and we get a y, and that's our midpoint. This is different. Here we have our midpoint already. So what we need to do is to find the coordinates of A, one of our endpoints. However, we will be doing it with the midpoint formula. So I'm going to separate my equation. Here I work with my x's, here I work with my y's. That is exactly what I'm going to do here. So x is here, y is right there. So again, I'm going to work with my x's first. So I'm going to be replacing these values with the values that I have here. Okay, so first I have to find my x coordinate. So my x coordinate in my midpoint, that's a -1. So I'm going to say -1 equals. Then it says x1, but I don't know that. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to leave that as x1 plus my x2. I do know my x2, that is a 3. Then it says divide that by 2. And what we're doing here is that we are solving for x1. So everything that I see, I need to do the opposite of it. So for example, here, I know I need to get rid of this divided by 2. So in order to do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And this is usually going to be your first step. You're just going to start off by multiplying by 2 on both sides. 2 times -1, that is -2, equal to, we drop the rest. So x1 plus 3. Okay. Again, we're solving for x1, so I need to get rid of this plus 3. And I do that by subtracting 3, aka the opposite of adding, on both sides. So now we have -2 minus 3, that is a -5, and that is what x1 equals. So my coordinate over here is going to start off with a -5. However, we're not done yet. We did all this work for one coordinate. I still need to do my y's. So I still need to do my y coordinate in this part of the equation. So same thing, I'm going to start off with my y, and so I know my y. Oops, I didn't highlight these. Let's see, highlight. So on the left side of my equation, I'm going to need my y coordinates. I'm going to come to my midpoint, see my y, that is a 2. Set that equal to my y1, which I don't know, so I'm going to leave that as y1, plus my y2, I do know that, that's a -5. Then I'm going to divide that by 2 according to our equation. First thing we need to do is to get rid of this 2. So I'm dividing by 2. I need to do the opposite to both sides. So I'm going to multiply by 2 here, multiply by 2 there. These are going to get canceled. When you have 2 times 2, that ends up being 4, equal to y1 plus a -5. I'm solving for y1. Therefore, here, I need to get rid of this -5. And the way I'm going to do that is by adding 5 to both sides. Always do the opposite. Then we have 4 plus 5, that is 9. And that is what y1 equals. And we are done. So our answer, what you will write here, will be A, and it has the coordinates of -5, 9. That's all we are doing there. So always tend to draw your line. I know it's going to take an extra second, but that extra second is definitely going to help. So don't just read here and say, oh, here's one point, here's another one, this is x1, y1, x2, y2, and find the midpoint. It doesn't work like that. So if we were doing number 2, I would draw my line with 2 endpoints and 1 midpoint. Then it says find the coordinates of J, so I know that's going to be x1, y1, if K is the midpoint. So I'm going to go to my midpoint, I'm going to say that's K. And it says line JL, so I know these are my endpoints. So here's J, here is L. Then I know those coordinates, this is -5, 10. L has the coordinates of 6, -8. And of course, I am finding the coordinates of j. So remember, if I don't know the coordinates, those are going to be x1, y1. My k is going to be x and y, because it's my midpoint. And then my L, the endpoints that I do know, that's going to be x2, y2, and now we can go ahead and start with our formula over here. All right, so if you have any questions on how we did that, come to lunch and let's get those questions answered. All right, let me know.